So here we're going to use the quadratic formula. Here it is written out. This is the thing I derived for you in the previous video. So yeah, if you have an equation that looks like this, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, you gotta have 0 on one side, then the solutions are going to be this big thing. So let's do this example here of using it. This one does not look like ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 because you don't have 0 over here. So you can subtract 4x from both sides, and then that will turn the left side into 2x squared minus 4x plus 1 equals 0 there. And that tells you the values of a, b, and c that you're going to use when you plug it in. We have a equals 2, b is negative 4, and c is 1. So now those are the numbers we're going to plug in. And so we're going to have negative b is going to be negative 4, which will become positive 4, plus or minus the square root of b squared is negative 4 squared minus 4ac. That means 4 times 2 times 1, all divided by 2a, which is 2 times 2. Okay, now here there's a couple options. You could just plug this into your calculator the way it is right here. And I'm actually going to do that for you just because it's a tricky thing to plug into your calculator because it's so big. So how do you deal with that? And there's some things you need to watch out for. Let's try to plug this whole thing in. The first thing is when you have a fraction and the top has more than one term in it, you need to make sure that the calculator knows that it's a fraction. So, for example, if I wanted to do something like 4 plus 2 divided by 6 on a calculator, if you just write it as 4 plus 2 over 6, the calculator is going to do 2 divided by 6 and then add that result to 4 because it's following the order of operations. So what you need to do is have parentheses around the 4 plus 2 and then do that divided by 6. And that will give you what it should become, which is 1, because, of course, 6 divided by 6 is 1. So we're going to keep that in mind here, and so keep in mind that the top of this is going to need parentheses around it. And I know that negative 4 is just 4, so I'm going to leave that there. And then your calculator doesn't have a plus or minus button. It has a plus button and it has a minus button, so you have to do them separately with different expressions here. So let's see, we're going to do 4 plus the square root of negative 4 squared. Make sure that you put parentheses around the negative 4 because otherwise it will just square 4 and make it negative. Because negative 4 squared should become positive 16, and this is what I want the calculator to do, is square negative 4. But if you do 4 squared and then make it negative, you get negative 16, which would be a mistake. So that's one thing to be careful of there. And then we do minus 4 times 2, and I guess you can write times 1, even though that doesn't do anything. And then I'm going to move the arrow button over to get out of the square root, close the parentheses, and then divide that by 2 times 2. And again, you want to make sure that it knows the denominator is 2 times 2, so we need to include that in parentheses too. if you're not sure whether you should be including parentheses around something, just go for it. That's a good rule of thumb. Extra parentheses put in the right place never hurts anything, and you might need to use them. So that's what that comes out to be. Then to get the -1, I'm going to do second entry and go over here to minus, just overwrite that plus with a minus, and you get this. So those are your solutions, 1.707 and 0.293. So that's how you can get approximate solutions with a calculator, because I had to round these off. As you know, these are probably irrational numbers. The decimals go on forever, and I couldn't include all of that infinite number of decimals, so this gets you really close to the solution, and it's probably good enough for most purposes. But if you want exact solutions, then you have to simplify this out by hand without actually doing without doing the square root with your calculator, because that's going to give you an approximation. So to get this exact solution, I'm going to say the -4 is just 4. We have that plus or minus the square root of -4 squared is 16 minus 4 times 2 times 1 is 8. Divided by 2 times 2 is 4. And 16 minus 8 is 8. And 8 is also 4 times 2. And I say that because you can take the square root of the 4 and the square root of the 2 separately. And so the square root of 4 is 2, so you can write this as 4 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 2 divided by 4. And you could reduce this if you want by factoring a 2 out from the top. Right at the top as 2 times something. It can be 2 plus or minus the square root of 2. And then divide that by the 4, which is 2 times 2. And then that will make that factor of 2 cancel out. And so to write the completely simplified exact solution would be this. 2 plus or minus the square root of 2 over 2. And there's nothing else you can do to simplify that. So we'll just leave that there. Okay, so here's a couple for you to do now. The first one is just solving this equation using the quadratic equation. And this reading question 2 here is about identifying which ones of these methods you'd want to use for which kinds of equations. So the answers to the blue exercises like this one are in the text of the section, just like all the other blue exercises, but the reading questions don't really have answers in there, so they're kind of more open-ended. And do your best, and we'll do some trickier stuff in the next video.